the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. Learn about the most current IT security threats in ransomware, phishing, business email compromise, cybercrime tactics, cyber heist schemes, social engineering scams, as well as hints and tips from leading professionals to help you prevent hackers from penetrating your network and dropping ransomware or malware payloads. This podcast will arm you with the best info to defend your network against the latest cyber crimes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And now, here's your host, Craig Petronella.
You're listening to Cybersecurity and Compliance with Craig Petronella. Visit us online at petronellatech.com.
Hello, and welcome to another podcast episode. It's March 3rd already, 2021, and we have our guest, attorney Lisa Shasteen. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Shasteen with Shasteen and Percy Law Firm.
Awesome. So exciting times today. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe some Bitcoin and maybe the security risk assessment, the needs of why companies should be doing assessments, and kind of get into also know your customer and know your vendors. You know, obviously the SolarWinds, Orion hack, putting too much trust in how to vet the folks that you work with. You probably have an IT person or an IT provider that you work with, but how do you know that they're doing everything they should be to protect your organization from something like ransomware? You want to talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind?
Sure. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I'm just full of information today and questions. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what's your take on Bitcoin? Bitcoin is, I think it's over $50,000 again.
This is so crazy. And I'm so sorry I'm not a Bitcoin investor. I could just kill myself for that, right? But the thing is, one thing is that the financial regulator has opened up Bitcoin, has opened up financial institutions to be stewards of cryptocurrency, and they've put out guidance for what you'd have to do in order to be a steward of cryptocurrency.
So what does that mean? Like for folks, what does that mean in layman's terms, if you don't mind?
Okay, so what it means, and I'm going to try to pull up some information on this, but what they have done is they've created some rules, like what kind of protections do you have to have in place, and what kind of procedures and security and everything do you have to have in place in order to take in cryptocurrency. It's basically you're storing the keys, the critical keys, right, for someone.
The private keys. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's essentially what the bank is storing. Bank security tends to be pretty good. So it's not like it's it's necessarily a bad thing.
So is this kind of like custodian or services?
Well, no, it's kind of like banking, kind of like they hold the keys to your money, right? Well, they currently hold the keys to your money, right? So they just do that now. But in order to play in the world of Bitcoin, they're holding something other than, electronic indicators, I guess, of U.S. currency. And, my question, and I'm not an expert on this part, is, okay, like if you have an issue, the U.S. Secret Service is responsible for protecting our U.S. currency, right? So what happens if, like, for example, if you're at a closing, you wire in $250,000 to, buy a house or whatever, and it goes missing, right? Because the wiring instructions were a hoax, and you sent your money to some, nefarious actor's bank account. Okay, so the U.S. Secret Service will get involved, and they are a partner with FinCEN which no human being can call. You have to be law enforcement or somebody in order to contact FinCEN to trace wires internationally and stuff. And so the U.S. Secret Service can do that for you. Will they do that for Bitcoin? Riddle me this. I don't know, because it's not U.S. currency. It's something else.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's going to be and will be more regulation around something like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I think that, you referenced the bank and the controller of the keys. I've been doing a lot of research and have done a lot of research around Bitcoin and have done mining and gone through that rabbit hole. And ultimately, if you don't control your private keys, you don't really have your Bitcoin or your crypto. So if you trust somebody else to have the keys, it's not really yours technically. So there's things called cold wallets that exist where you can have your keys and be in control of them. But then that opens the whole door of basic cybersecurity hygiene. If you don't properly store your keys and you get hacked, you have no excuse but yourself.
I actually have a friend that happened to. He's an electrician. This guy got into cryptocurrency. God bless him. Made some money. He's doing great. Got all his cryptocurrency, and then he was hacked. It's all gone. And I'm
look at what there's that guy. I forget his last name. His first name's Craig, actually, but he claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, and he has no supporting evidence. The world doesn't believe him.
Right.
But there was I read something, gosh, I think it was last year around this time, that he claims that he got hacked and billions of dollars were stolen in Bitcoin. And, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as it stands today, my opinion is it's new, it's still in its infancy. It's the Wild West. There's, a lot of technical proficiency that's required to store and properly secure your private keys. And the most, typical individuals are not going to have that technical know-how to do that. And, we as humans are poor with passwords now. So now you're introducing, I think it's like 26 different unique words that you have to have as part of your private key in a certain order, and you can't store them, or you should not store them on your computer or anywhere electronically. It's literally written down on a piece of paper. And if you lose that sheet and then you lose your hardware wallet or your cold wallet, you're toast. It's gone forever. There's no bank to run to. There's nobody that can help you. You're toast.
Right.
Right.
And there's, so that's, that is the issue. And that's what I'm thinking, from a legal standpoint, we're not ready. We're just not ready. We don't have, well, let me put it this way. If you are prepared to lose it all, go right ahead. But if you put actual money into cryptocurrency rather than investing at $1 and then it becomes like $1 billion, if you put your actual money, let's say you buy $50,000 worth of that stuff, that's probably a significant transaction to most people in the United States. So, if you were to put U.S. currency into cryptocurrency and then you don't have good cyber hygiene and you get hacked and it's gone, who are you going to run to? It's like, well, what are you going to call? Law enforcement? You're going to call, Secret Service?
Absolutely valid point. And I think that's why you're starting to see companies. I know of some, there's I think one in Raleigh. It's called CASA, CASA. I don't know if you ever heard of them. But they're they're like a custody company that you can hire and pay them to help you with this stuff. It's expensive, but if you've got a lot of crypto and Bitcoin, you want to make sure that you're spreading yourself around so that, you don't become a target, basically. Right. So I think that there's going to be new companies that sprout up like that help folks with this. And, we have a domain, a website that we launched called blockchainsecurity.com. And we're actually starting to put a store on that to help people around this. And, we're building some new training around, basic cybersecurity hygiene for how to protect yourselves. I think that Bitcoin is here to stay, and I think that it is going to be a big transformation. Do I think it's going to be difficult? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to go up and down? Yep.
Well,
In the short term.
and here's what I would say. I love technology. You know me. I love technology. I wish I want to be you when I grow up. I love technology, right? But I also have to weigh the risks for myself. And I think this is where the individual investor has to look at that. And that's something that even, Charles Schwab or, whatever E-Trade is going to ask you is, they're going to ask you to fill out a profile. What is your profile for risk?
Just like with stocks, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So your investment advisors and everybody is going to assess your ability or willingness to your appetite for risk.
Yep.
And so if you can risk the money, go right ahead. But I'm just saying, for me, I really wouldn't want to lose $50,000 right now. I mean, I just wouldn't want to do that. I've got a bunch of commitments going out the door, and that's not something I'm interested in. So I'm just thinking, can I make money somewhere else where I pretty much know that in one fell swoop I won't lose it all? Yeah, I know places where I can put it where I know it'll be, or at least most of it will be.
Yeah, I think it's different for different people, and it's not for everyone. I think is the point. I think long term, it will be good, as an investment. But you're absolutely right. I think in the short term, it's going to have fluctuations. So if you can't stomach that, then definitely don't get into it for sure.
I would say if you're going to do that, if you're going to put any significant amount of money into it, unless you're just a cowboy rock star and you can just lose whatever, then I would suggest getting, like calling, Petronella or somebody to consult with you and just make sure that the environment that you're storing your keys in is going to be, at least reasonably sufficient, that you can count on it. Now, counting on things, speaking of which, I want to talk about the hafnium thing. Okay, sure. This was out yesterday, right? Microsoft is like, their hair is on fire, right? Because, the exchange servers software is being targeted by a nation state, and it's China. It's Chinese based, let's put it that way. And that's from Microsoft. These people are determined, and they're trying to exfiltrate information. That's what they're trying to do. So how many people, live with an exchange server? I do, so
the backbone of Office 365.
Hello. So, and that's how a lot of people manage things. They manage permissions, they manage all sorts of things,
But this goes back to, in my opinion, encryption. So if you're using encrypted email on top of Exchange, they could hack Exchange all day long. They're not getting in the encrypted contents.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. See, there's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So see, this is what I want to talk about is like how, what are some steps people can take immediately to sort of protect themselves right now, because I'm interested, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, it all starts, it all starts with, how do we check the pulse and get that risk assessment done, right? So it all starts with that security risk assessment, and having a vendor that's trusted and vetted and has a good reputation go through all this with you and with a fine-tooth comb. There's been so many breaches that you really can't trust anybody. So in my opinion, you should really be using encryption everywhere possible.
It's become like that, hasn't it? I mean, it really has. It's so crazy because a lot of people are still thinking, oh, I don't have anything to hide. Yes, you do. Trust me on this. I mean, I have a friend who's a physician. He was, his identity was stolen. And it took him 5 years to prove who he was. He needed to buy a new house for his wife and his family. He's got 4 kids.
Wow.
He's a very successful surgeon. He had to go through absolute heck to just establish he was who he was through the IRS, through, everything. And it's just a matter of the willingness to inform yourself and to take.
Well, and I think it goes back to, if we talk about identity theft for a moment, it goes back to monitoring. You don't know what you don't know. So everyone listening should have some type of identity theft monitoring service from a trusted vendor that, you're keeping eyes on this stuff. You're made aware of your information leaked on the dark web, and you're made aware if somebody tries to open credit in your name. There's all these bad actors, and they're looking to exploit you any way they possibly can. And ID theft is it's a big black market game, and if you're a fairly well-to-do person, like a physician, like you mentioned, or a surgeon, that's an identity that hackers are going to want to take and exploit.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be a primary target. You could be a spear phishing target.
Right.
To me, it seems like identity theft monitoring, or identity monitoring and identity theft protection has become essential. It's kind of like, well, are you going to buy, insurance for your car?
Right.
Well, of course you are. So, wouldn't you do that for your life and who you are and like all of your accounts? I mean, it seems to me like that's even more fundamental, and it's inexpensive. I mean, it's like, just freaking do it. And why doesn't everybody just run right out right now, put down the cursor, and call the identity or call the credit monitoring agencies? There are 3 of them: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And they will, for free, put a credit freeze on your account. And you should just do it, because that way nobody's getting in unless they have your PIN number. Period.
That's right.
I mean, it's free. Why wouldn't you do it? Just do it. It's just an extra. If you need credit, you give somebody a PIN. You lift the freeze for that particular person, and then you move on and you put the freeze back.
Right.
Not hard, do it.
Yeah. Well, I call those layers. That's a layer. That's a good, strong layer. Can't obviously rely on that as a silver bullet, but it's definitely one good layer to start with. And anyone can call and do that for free. And then layering on these other things like the monitoring and other technologies. But, going back to the Exchange server, if you use encryption on top of Microsoft Exchange server, I mean, obviously you want to patch and make sure that things are secure, and then test the patches to make sure they're effective. But at the end of the day, if you're using end-to-end encryption, which is what we use, and they do get breached and hacked, the hackers get scrambled data.
Well, let's talk about something else. I want to talk about something else. So, the issue of trust right now has become really critical. And I mentioned, I think last time, this book written by Major General Mary Kay Eater. It's American Cyberscape, and it's a path to trust. It's she just, in a very narrow book, is very little. You can read it. It just lays it all out. Like, why do we not trust? We don't trust anybody anymore, except for small businesses. We trust nobody. Especially, we don't trust the news media. We don't trust anything. And it's warranted. So how do we get back to a place where we know what we can trust? We can't even, after SolarWinds, we can't even trust the vendors that we've decided to trust to allow them to update automatically on our systems. How do we deal with that? Well, a company that I'm actually on the board of, so full disclosure, but Threat Warrior is figuring that out, and they've got a situation for that. But the point is, it's very, very difficult for the normal human being to figure out what to trust, right? And
yeah, but if we go back to the basics and we use
it's a layer.
And what's that?
It's a layered approach. I mean, that's what you were saying is.
But if we use an end-to-end encrypted data storage and an end-to-end encrypted email, if we go back to the SolarWinds hack and the patch, again, they get into the system, but as long as I'm smart enough to put my sensitive information in the encrypted vault, you're not getting it. And the system that I use doesn't use passwords. It's bound to the device, so you can't phish me for my password. So
But you're okay. But you are a technology. You're an expert at this. Okay, people need your advice. But there are a lot of people running around out there. They still try to do it themselves. I want to talk about something else. So, so I want to talk about the wisdom of having someone, to help consult with or something. I mean, Craig is a really nice person. He will help you out. He will tell you stuff. He will help you look at your situation. He'll give you an idea of what you need. He'll help you implement if you want to pay him. But the thing is, you gotta first at least reach out. Craig doesn't bite. Craig's actually a really good friend, and so it's easy to contact someone who's knowledgeable. The question is, who is knowledgeable? And, so again, it's back to that trust issue. Well, I know Craig, so I would trust him. So there you go. And his number's right there on the screen. But, and this is not just a plug or anything. It's just that you need to have that person in your life. Just like you have people that fix your car, you have people that, clean your business. You have these people who are service providers to you. You have your banker, you have your lawyers, you have, these people who are professionals that help serve you, and you know them and you trust them. You need a technologist in your life. You've got to have it. It's one of those things. They're in your little tribe. You got to have one,
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words. I agree with you. I mean, and even if you have a IT person or an IT provider that you're working with, we're not looking to take their job. If you've got a good relationship, keep that relationship. But what we are saying is it's not going to hurt you to have a security risk assessment done in working with that vendor if you choose, and do a checks and balance. I mean, we have to have it done too, especially with the companies that we are working with around the CMMC or in a regulated space like HIPAA. You want to make sure that you're checking these things at least annually. And then, that's your maturity level, your scorecard. And people are human. Maybe your IT provider had all the best intentions, but maybe you didn't have the best protections against ransomware, or maybe the IT provider wasn't aware of some new technology that could benefit and really significantly reduce the risks of your company. And, there's gaps that can be found in most companies. Some are bigger gaps than others. But the fact is that, we can help identify these gaps and then provide solutions to fill the gaps, and the more gaps you fill, the better protected you are.
Well, and what I think one of the things that I'm seeing, like, I got a call this morning of a gentleman who has a significant business and with several locations, and his business was down for an entire week. I mean, he sells items, large ticket items, and he sells them all day long, every day, and they are in high demand. They're actually back ordered, et cetera. And he was down for a week. And I was like, hey, if I run down to one of your locations with a bunch of cash in my hand, can you sell me one of these things? And he was like, no, I can't. That was his employee, actually. And so I talked to the owner, and they have people who have learned to maintain their network, just to keep things up and running for the business, but they don't have anybody really managing this. And I think in this day and age, it has become, there's not going to be a neon sign, everybody. So here's my neon sign. I'm like making one right in front of you. Now is the time. It is happening, right? You have to have somebody looking at this stuff, at least from the outside. Have an outside advisor come in, like Craig was saying. It's called a risk assessment. But, if you have a situation like that, you need to do something called hardening, and you've got to go in there and find out the holes in your security settings and your systems and all that kind of stuff. Figure out where your protected data is, right? You have to have a data classification idea. Otherwise, everything in your company should be protected. And that's not realistic. So you want to make sure you classify your data, figure out where your data, your most sensitive data is, your most valuable data that's critical to your business. And you need to figure out where it is exposed. What are you doing with it? Where does it fit in your business processes, right? And in that business process, is there technology that can help protect that data as you do those processes? This is not technology that's going to slow you down. It's not meant to interfere with anything, but it's there working in the background to keep it secure. And that's what Craig does. So let's say you have this, ransomware hit. Craig, what do you do is there a protocol that you use? What do you do when you confront a situation like this? Because I think, this is basic, but it's actually happening so much. It's important.
Sure. So, ransomware, just to kind of briefly overview what it is, it's malware that gets into your system oftentimes through business email compromise or a phishing email or some type of link that somebody's clicked on in the organization. And it drops what's called a payload and oftentimes encrypts the system with very strong 2048-bit encryption. And it's extortion. It basically says, okay, depending on the strain of ransomware you get, you might have 24 or 48 hours to respond. And
encryption, by the way, means it locks up your data. You can't.
Right. You can't get access to any of your files on your system. And it causes, disruption, business disruption. So, while your data is scrambled, the hackers want to get paid in Bitcoin typically because it's, more anonymized. And, but here's the bottom line. If you have strong data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity, if you have strong systems in place to protect your organization, you do not have to pay the ransom. And this is something that I say all the time. Your company should be doing fire drills around ransomware and pretend that you just got ransomware today. How fast can you recover? What happens? Are all your staff unable to work? If they're degraded, at what percentage are they degraded?
Well, and figure out what the acceptable risk is, right?
Right.
Is it okay for you to be down for a day, for a week, for a month? What is your tolerance for that?
Yeah. So let's say, let's say you have, you don't have a very large budget. Maybe you're a small business and, you don't have a large budget, but you can afford to be down for a week. Most people can't, but let's say you can. The longer you could afford to be down, the cheaper the solution becomes. Mm-hmm. The less time you're able to accept. And typically bigger companies, if you've got 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 employees, you have to multiply this stuff. So if you're a big company of 1,000 employees and you're down just 15 minutes, that's a whole lot of money that you just spent, So there's more advanced systems that have appliances that will do data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity, and then take that data at a bit level and move it offsite and then encrypt it to make sure that ransomware can't get into that as well. Because poor backup solutions can also get infected, and the hackers know that.
You bring up a good point. So, my thought process, because you guys have taught me really well, when somebody says, I've been hit by ransomware, my first question is, where's your backups? Right. So it's like ransomware equals, where's my backup? But if you have your backup connected to your production system, it's likely going to be ransomware too. So you can't do that. You got to have backup management also. And that's what you're talking about, right? Because anything connected to that network that's infected could be locked up. That's why you have to have separate backups, and you have to know back to when do you have the information backed up, right? Like how often do you back up? Can you get everything restored as of yesterday? Or is it going to be like a month ago because you didn't back up since a month ago or something and take it off site? So anyway.
Yep. And so we recently launched a new website called compliancearmor.com. And on Compliance Armor, there's some, I call them puzzle pieces. They're inexpensive products that you can buy. There's a scorecard on there that you can score the cybersecurity maturity level of your organization. It's like a one-page checklist sheet that does a good job of identifying the areas that you should pay attention to. But take take note, take today, put the mouse down and the pen down and do a fire drill on your backup systems. Pretend that your stuff crashed. What do you do? What's your process? Do you have a policy, a backup disaster recovery policy? Do you have security control layers in place? I hope you're not using something like Dropbox or something like that's online only, because those systems sometimes get infected too. You got to make sure that, there's actually ransomware simulations that we can do, where we can pretend that you're infected, and what does it get into? How does it affect the organization? But doing this proactive drills and exercises are worth so much in the end, because if you actually do this stuff and then God forbid in the future you get hit, you've gone through it before. It's a drill, so you know what you're up against. But it's the companies that are using, like Lisa said, the USB attached hard drive to the server, and it always sticks, it's always connected, and you might rotate them out. Maybe you have more than one, and somebody takes one home. The point is that if you're doing that type of system and it's still connected, it can also get the ransomware on it as well. And you know what happens? I've seen this time and time again. People use these what I call dated or legacy backup solutions that are inexpensive and cheap, but they don't have the knowledge and know-how to check to actually make sure the proper data is on them. I can't tell you how many times I've had business owners tell me, "Oh, we're doing this rotated hard drive thing where I take this USB hard drive home every day and we swap it out." Well, that's great, but when was the last time you did a backup fire drill to look on that device and see, number one, did it work? And number two, is it backing up the data that you actually need?
Yeah, and have you ever checked whether it will work to restore?
Right.
What you had, because every little tiny piece of that can fail. And so it really has to be practiced. There has to be a regular schedule.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about this all the time: redundancy, multiple systems. Never rely on one system to do all your work, because it will fail. It'll fail one day. My own desktop that I built from scratch, I use it for artificial intelligence and research. It died the other week. And what did I do? I have 2 laptops as my backup. So I work off my laptops, and so I get back up and running. But the fact of the matter is, we are human. We get comfortable in our space and how we have things set up, right? But if you're not doing these fire drills to anticipate failure in the future, it's going to happen at the worst time possible. Your computer's going to crash right before your meeting or your big proposal or your big Zoom meeting or whatever nowadays. And what's your plan? What do you do when that happens? You have to have redundancy in place. And if you've got a server and it's a single point of failure, well, you're a sitting duck. You need to have some redundancy there. And when I talk about redundancy, I'm not talking about an extra hard drive and a RAID array. I'm talking about separate systems, redundancy protocols, policies, procedures. What do you do in these situations? How do you function? How does your business continue to operate?
Think about this, like if let's say you were phished and your email's compromised, which is extremely common. It's 85% of the data compromised, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, phishing is real, it's a thing. So, if you do that, then all of a sudden people in companies, I've seen them, they start emailing around. I'm like, your email system is infected. Hello. It's like, no, you don't email me. You have to have a separate communication system, a bridge, some chat channel, something that you're using that's outside of your system, because you don't yet know what's infected. You have to have Craig come in with forensics and figure it out. But until then, you got to have a way to communicate. So how are you going to do that? You need to have a policy, and everybody needs to know what that is before they get to that incident, because people will be running around with their hair on fire because they can't do business, and they're going to grab whatever is the most convenient. They're going to use their emails. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to be, it's a nightmare. You got to, and that's even worse. It's not like, this is a legal event. Please don't tell everybody. You have a policy about, confidentiality, things like that are very important to your company. So, all these things work together. It's really better to just be prepared before you get there, because it's hard to learn it the day that it's happening. You just can't learn it,
Right.
that fast.
And honestly, I think that as companies like cybersecurity insurance providers become more strict on requiring the supporting evidence of the organization just to even get the insurance. With ransomware, a lot of folks don't get an insurance coverage or a payout because they didn't have anything in place. So the insurance companies have been getting killed with ransomware payouts. So they're waking up from the slumber, they're getting smarter, and they're looking for risk assessment supporting evidence. What is your organization doing to anticipate and proactively prepare in the event this happens to you? And if you can show enough supporting evidence that you've done your part, then you'll most likely get that payout. But I've actually received a lot of calls to our company around folks looking to get cybersecurity coverage, and they can't get it because they get this really long, what I call a vendor security questionnaire. And it's sometimes 300 plus questions about your organization and your policies and your procedures. And when was your last risk assessment done? And how are you training your staff? And what evidence do you have that you're doing all this stuff?
Well, and by the way, it's not just that. Let's talk about PCI. So the payment card industry, anybody out there take credit cards? I think most people do, right?
Yep.
So basically, you should be doing this anyway, because you have to do a self-assessment, if nothing else, for the credit card companies every year. And God help you if you lie on those things.
But here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. I think that they use something like Square or QuickBooks to take.
Oh yeah, they think they do it. It's not my
Yeah,
job.
they think it's the vendor's problem and that they're paying the vendor to, and that's not the truth. That's a myth.
You're the captain of the ship. You chose the vendor. It's your responsibility.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people come to me and they're like, "Well, why do I need all this security that you're recommending, Craig? I'm using Amazon AWS. I'm secure, right?"
Oh. Okay,
No.
yeah. Amazon will secure its environment, but not yours. You have to.
Yeah, that's I think that's the ultimate takeaway. The users or the organizations have their own responsibilities. These providers like Amazon, AWS, or Microsoft or Google, they provide their platform, but it's your responsibility to secure and use and leverage the tools that they give you and provide the evidence that you've configured those systems and security hardened those systems properly, and that you're doing the risk assessments and the pen testing on those systems. Just because you're outsourcing or paying a monthly fee to them does not take that responsibility away from you.
That's true. And also, this whole thing with, like if you are breached, and I was talking to Craig before this podcast, and one of the things he was suggesting, because he's like, well, I go to NIST. If somebody has a breach situation, I go to NIST in trying to, get them back up and running. And I look through the security protocols. I look through the cybersecurity framework. I run them through maybe even CMMC, which is the cybersecurity maturity model put out by the Department of Defense, sponsored by the Department of Defense, put out by CMMC-AB. But in any event, CMMC builds upon a federal requirement, a security requirement for companies serving the federal contractors. You could be baking chickens and you still have to be CMMC certified by somebody else. You cannot self-certify anymore. Used to be NIST 800-171 would allow you to just self-certify. Oh yeah, I'm doing all that. Yeah, yeah, I got all that in place. Okay, now they're like, well, actually, we've had so many problems with people getting hacked and being insecure. That was big fat lie. And now we're going to require that these trained assessors come in and take 2 pieces of evidence for every practice that's required at your level. There's 5 levels. So Craig was talking about putting that, just sort of reviewing that, because it is a very strong security model. It's a jumping off point. It's not necessarily all you need, but it's certainly a very good comprehensive review, right? And the thing is, what I would say to you is, it is a maturity model. So the thing is, if you're supposed to have this baked into your organization, you can't just call Craig like a week before the assessor is supposed to show up and say, hey man, I need to be level 3 CMMC. Okay, so can you put some stuff in my system and everything? No, you really can't.
You have to show the supporting culture. So you have to show the timeline. So if you do
the
something
practices, they have like for level 3, which is probably going to be common, is it's got 131 practices. Well, you have to then have procedures underneath those practices that implement what those practices are. And then the auditor has to be able to take 2 objective pieces of evidence that you are adhering to that. And it has to be something that you're used to and everybody in your organization is used to. They can say, hey, I want to talk to Fred over there. I want to see what he knows about this. And you gotta let them do it. And they can't help you comply up either. They when they talk to you, can't help you. All they can do is look at it and say, okay. And they make a note and they're out the door.
And it's pass fail.
Right. It is pass fail.
So you're going to fail if you do that kind of stuff. And then you're going to pay a lot of money.
But the point is, and that's important to anybody working in that chain for, federal contracting right now, which everybody thinks is going to probably roll out to states and everything else. If you're supplying any of those people, you might want to think about it. Call Craig. He is you're an RPO, right?
That's right. A registered provider organization. And I'm a certified registered practitioner.
As am I.
That's right.
But Craig made me do that, which was really good for me. So anyway, what I would say is I think it's just, a takeaway bottom line. It's important to have a technology person that you can call and consult with, just like you would consult with your lawyers and your accountants. No matter what you're doing, if you're making a change and you're reviewing things maybe annually at the very least, you need to, consult with your technology expert that is not the same person as your regular technology person, because it's hard for somebody to check their own homework. They see the same things as being good, right? So you have to have somebody come in and do an assessment.
And yeah, well said. And one of the things too to point out is with the CMMC, you can't have the IT person be the same role as the cyber person and the compliance person. They have to be 2 separate people or providers that do that. So that's really important. And you should also, in your organization, you need to designate somebody that's going to be the lead on this, and like Lisa said, you have to go through your policies, procedures, your risk assessments, your pen tests. You need to do that at least every year. And there are some companies that are going after higher levels, like level 4 and level 5 CMMC maturity levels. And you're going to have to do them more often.
Well, and that requires a really advanced level of cyber and visibility into data exfiltration and stuff, which something like Threat Warrior can provide. But it's that's a very advanced concept.
Exactly. Yeah. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry, it's so random, but I just have all these questions today.
No, that's fine. That's how honestly I like these to be, because I don't like to have a formal fixed agenda. I like to whatever kind of pops in my head at the time or questions. I think that's the fun of it, really.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking about today. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, man. Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to yet another episode of Cybersecurity and Compliance with Craig Petronella. Listen to all of our podcasts on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Visit us online at petronellatech.com to book a meeting with Craig about your business.
Thanks for listening to the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. For other episodes and more information, visit petronellatech.com. Also visit our other websites, compliancearmor.com and blockchainsecurity.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and stay secure.